Now you're saying, hey, not only be an order of magnitude better, but be better on something that others are not even competing on. That's brilliant. Then you don't even need to say I'm 10x better. Hey, I have this. You don't do it. You don't. It's pretty simple, easy pitch. So it was a little bit of a natural evolution. There were a few things initially in our business model that we changed significantly. For example, battery swap, I mentioned briefly about it. We don't do battery swaps today. That was a significant change, but that wasn't because our vision changed. That's basically where our approach changed towards achieving the same vision with electric vehicles. Right. Hope that answers.
One question. So from the competition perspective, you talked about the USP which you have. But apart from that particular USP, do you have something else in mind as well which sets you apart from the competition? My question is coming from, let's say, Mahindra, which already has Reva. It's in car segment, but it bought a US-based electric scooter vehicle which it plans to bring to India. So any sustainable advantage which you want to hold on to while dealing with the competition?
So if I get it right, you're really asking what is the long-term moat in the business. Correct. So long-term moat comes due to multiple reasons. In our case, we believe the approach that we've taken of vertical integration gives us a very interesting moat. Because now, even if somebody wants to say, oh, let's copy this vehicle, let's recreate the entire experience, it won't be the same as, they can't recreate the exact same experience. They won't get the exact same performance in the same weight. They won't get the exact same range in the same cost. They won't get the exact same amount of software features with the same hardware, because they're not going to build it on a similar platform. Their current approach forces them to basically build a platform on which they add modules, right? A battery module, a motor module, a controller module, a dashboard module. That inherently adds a fair degree of redundancy in the system. Now, can they junk that module and go in the vertically integrated way and build a very integrated product? Yes, but then that gives you an automatic mode, because then what they're saying is, let's build Ather from scratch again. So, whatever, it gives you a couple of years of moat around you. And another moat that comes, which is a little structural to how the industry is, once an industry gets started, it becomes increasingly harder for you to go the vertically integrated route. So think of it today. Apple is a vertically integrated company. It's probably one of the, Apple and Tesla probably are the best examples that you can take in vertical integration. But then now the challenge is, if today a mobile phone manufacturer says, hey, let me also build a vertically integrated company and build a similar software and hardware integration like Apple, the challenge is there is already an Apple that you're competing with. You're basically now catching up. All you're saying is, I'll catch up on the Apple experience built over 20, whatever number of years, right? And build that better than Apple. Sure, be Apple's guest, but it's going to take you a fairly long time to get there. How will you survive in the interim? What is your USP? Right? Your USP is not going to come from cost, because vertical integration in the initial few years is going to be pretty expensive. It's not going to come from the actual user experience, because Apple's going to deliver a better user experience. You don't have the learnings, the DFMEA experience, the DFMA experience that integration needs, that Apple already has. So your journey uphill is pretty hard. Right? So the first movers, like this is one of those few times when the first mover advantage is very real in industry, if you're going the vertical integration route. Right? What I've seen is very important is to have your own thesis before you start building anything. Okay? And that's why I said I'm not a big fan of this approach where you say, so we actually have a wall in our office. So there's this Facebook saying, move fast and break things, right? Very famous now. I'm sure everybody would have heard of it. We have a wall in our office where we have literally broken down the word break things, right? You don't want to break things. You don't want to be as stupid as saying, let's just ship something, right? And then we'll figure what sticks, right? No, what you want to do is have a very solid view of the future. Well, that's our approach again, right? Like this is something that we, both co-founders in our case, believe very strongly in. Both of us believe very strongly in. You want to have a very definitive view of the future. And then, once you have that view in mind, now you want to figure out how to get there. The approach can vary, right? Like you probably think straight line, you will probably go all over. But if you don't have a definitive view, all you know is, oh, this seems interesting, right? Big data seems interesting, or chatbots seem interesting, or AI seems interesting. You don't know what you're building towards, right? You will start doing something, you'll do it for 3 months, and then you will reach a point where you'll say, this doesn't make sense for India. Or, oh, if you have to do this, you have to own the full technology stack. Oh, or Facebook has like an immeasurable lead here. Or like, 3 years later, this is going to be obsolete. Why am I doing this? Social media, Facebook, right? I generally believe that Facebook had a very definitive view of the world and not what they actually wrote on that wall, move fast and break things. That was only for the execution part, which is that, hey, if we get social media right, in the future, 20 years later, people are going to be super connected, their lives are going to be super digital, and they're going to, like, this is going to be an important and integral part of the entire, their life, right? Now, that's a definitive view. That view is not concerning Facebook, right? So if you, it does not depend on Facebook. It's almost saying 20 years later, that is going to be reality come what may, right? Even if we died, somebody else is anyways going to crack it, right? So that's a definitive view that you have for the future. That would probably require you to do a lot of reading, talking to a whole bunch of people, do whatever research you can, but then reach a point where you can distill it down to a one-line thesis, right? That's the thesis that you're willing to bet your life on, right? It is guaranteed, right? It is guaranteed that everybody's going to buy online, right? That's such a rock-solid truth that you don't need to worry about your business plan's sustainability, right? It's guaranteed everybody's going to buy online tomorrow, right? It's probably 5 years, it's probably 10 years, heck, it might be 20 years, right? But that is a guaranteed thing. So if everybody is going to buy online tomorrow, and that's so certain, it certainly gives you a lot of clarity as a business. Now what you can say is, so if it's guaranteed that everybody's going to buy online, if I can build a business which gives you a lower price, it's a guaranteed business, right? Or if I can build a business around the logistics of e-commerce companies, right? It's guaranteed to work, right? I might take 3 years, I might take 8 years, but I have such a big view of the future that I can afford a few mistakes. Right? What goes really wrong is when you say, oh, well, food tech seems very interesting, right? Or let's say you start with that, and then you land up in a place where you end up concluding the economics don't work, right? As opposed to starting a definite view of the world where you're saying, well, everybody's going to order food online 10 years later, right? And then you figure out what is the part of that new economy that you really want to be a part of, right? That you really want to change. Rather than figure out, it's almost the same analogy as saying, you've got a piece of technology and now you're trying to figure out how to build a product out of it, right? As opposed to saying, well, there is a definitive need, people will actually pay money for this, now let me figure out what sort of product I can actually build, what sort of technology I need to develop for this. As a startup, there are usually two things which forces you to unveil it early. Now, most hardware startups unveil their products early. They go on Kickstarter, they go on a crowdsourcing campaign, purely because they need to show traction. Right? If they don't have traction, then they won't be able to convince investors to put money into them, right? Or sometimes they don't even get investors. The crowdsourced funding is the only way for them to actually get started and build something, right? In our case, the reason we have been using since late 2014, and we unveiled in 2016. If I be honest, because we wanted to make sure that we survive. If we had $50 million in the bank, you wouldn't have heard of me or of Ather until probably middle or late this year, right? Because why would we care? Why would we care about making a splash and being out there, being visible if you have all the money? Right? But you need money as a startup, especially in an ecosystem. Right? For us to get that 1 million probably was a different story, but the 12 million after that and the 30 million after that, let's be real, it only comes if investors actually get excited about what you're doing, right? And that often forces you to be out there a little early. Now, in our case, as I said on the mail, this was actually also a complicated case of us underestimating the time it would take to go through testing, right? So we had a functional prototype. We were pretty kicked about it. We figured, hey, if we reach this stage to actually get to production, it's probably 12 months, right? It can't take much longer. We under-anticipated by at least 2x, right? And that's why now it's like another year on top of it. So that's clearly our fault, right? Had we known this, I think we would have delayed a little bit more. We would probably have not unveiled it in the start of 2016. We would have waited a little bit more, even if we needed funding, right? So that's one big part.
I have a question.
Yeah.
As you are trying to do something which is pretty unique, as you said that you started from the scratch and everything, how did you went through the journey of identifying that what is the technology set and everything is the right thing to do, which you are very sure about? Because many times when you try to build something new, you try some technology sets and all, but at later stage you feel
Technology.
means it is a smart vehicle, right? There must be some technology which you should be using to get the feedback back and to be able to, right? You may not, there may be some innovation around that. So how that journey went where you were sure about, yes, this makes sense to put long-term effort and bet so much. And number two, subsequent to that question is that how did you then ramp up the team to where you are right now to be able to sell that vision and they working for you in a motivated way without seeing the first sale?
Yeah. I think both of those tasks are really the founding team's responsibility. Like those are probably the biggest jobs that you have as a co-founder. In our case, those are the biggest jobs founders. So yes, it's a very tricky thing when you're talking about vertical integration, when you're talking about taking really long-term bets on a technology approach, on a product approach, because what you're really betting there is that the specs that you're writing or the approach that you're talking of is the right thing to bet on, right? And you're also going and saying no pivoting, right? Like you can't be like waking up every day and saying, oh man, that's a fancier or better approach, right? You've got to have something that you can hold on to for like a solid 4 or 5 years without it being largely untrue. There is no, I can't think of a easy logical explanation of how do you crack that. I think that's one of the skills that you need to probably have in the starting founding team to get that right.